Happy Tuesday. We've been waiting for this amazing episode today. And, this is Sales Chatter, the logistics podcast where we try to help 10,000 reps hit a million GP. I'm your co host, Ryan Mohammed. With me is my good friend, President and CEO of RGTX Logistics Solutions, the bodacious cowboy, Jeff Dickinson. How you doing this morning, brother?
Good morning. Boy, this week is going pretty good so far. We are continuing to discuss empowering women into trucking, which is a huge topic nowadays. And I just can't wait to speak to Barb. So, with that said, let's get into it.
Boom.
To the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
Yeah, you're so right, Jeff. I remember having the So what we do, just a little behind the scenes of what we kind of do here at Sales Chatter. When we're booking guests, we usually book like a 10 or 15-minute call with a guest coming on and just kind of get to know them, hear about their life experiences before we actually bring them on the show. And I had mine with Barb, and I don't know if you would know this, Jeff, but like our 10 to 15-minute call was like 45 minutes to an hour because she's just so amazing with her stories, and that's just so pleasant. Just to hear the stories she was able to share with me over the years of not just driving being something. She even taught me bluegrass music. Do you know what bluegrass music is, Jeff?
A little bit of it. It's like country mixed in with other different, genres. And it's, I believe that it came from when they used to run moonshine back in that time, where they seriously, and a lot of bluegrass music came out of that, huddling around campfires and banjos and all different kinds of instruments. But it's really good music if you listen to it. Have you ever
It's
listened
amazing.
to it?
Yeah, you got to. So I listened to it after the conversation that we have with Barb, and we'll have Barb come on and tell us exactly what it is. Because when I said no, that I didn't know what bluegrass music was, she was like, "Yeah, you're." I think it was like 90% of people in Canada don't know what it is, but she is a huge advocate for it. Definitely, she's been at different music events with that, and with her experience just being a truck driver, it's like been a way for her to basically create the life that she's wanted to live.
Hmm.
So without further ado, we want to invite Barb Duncan over to Sales Chatter. So excited this morning. Good morning, Barb. How you doing?
Oh, good morning. I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to join us this morning. Much appreciated. I can't wait to hear about your story, your background, what you did, what you're doing now. So let's just get into it, Ryan.
Yeah, of course. So, Barb, let's get into the truck driving aspect of it. So, truck driver, why?
Hmm.
Oh, short answer is I did not like being stuck at home out in the country, middle of nowhere. My family are homebodies. So it was a way for me to get out and see the world and usually get paid for it.
I like the short answer. So, tell us a bit about how'd you get started in trucking, how it found you, how long you've been doing it, and some of the life experiences that you've learned from it.
Okay, so I was going to college back in the late '80s, and I worked part time at in a shipping in a warehouse in the shipping receiving, and ordering, like doing picking orders, and then had to package it and then send them with the right carrier. And we had the local city guys from different trucking companies come in, and my best friend had moved to northern Ontario, up north of Huntsville, and so on the weekends I would drive up there to visit. And one of the local trucking company guys had said, "If you're always driving, why don't you get your trucking license?" And I said, "I don't know anything about truck driving or the industry." And so he explained it to me, as he came in week after week. And the company I started out with was Canadian Pacific Express and Transport. They had the contract with the armed forces bases here in Canada. And I was out of the Barrie location, so the head ammunition depot was about 20 minutes away from our yard. So with the hazardous goods, when you're hauling explosives, they need to have a second person in the passenger seat. Only qualifications then was 18 years of age and a valid car license. And so I did that during the winter months, and let me tell you, that was an experience. And I just enjoyed being out there driving and seeing the countryside. And then when I finished that first year, it was computer programming that I had taken, and we had to do co-op that following summer. And I did a co-op within the trucking company and building customer service. And by the end of that summer, they had started up their own truck driving school. And since I was already in the company and I had voiced my opinion, that they offered me a spot in their truck driving school, which pat myself on back here. I was the first female graduate of the school, and then I became the first female driver in the Ontario-Quebec region. I know my mother cried the day when I went to visit them to tell them I got my truck driving license. And I learned that in my early 20s, there are things you don't say to your mother. And I said, like, by hauling explosives, we get into an accident, we go out with a bang, we'll never know what happened. So you really have to have a good sense of humor to the industry, regardless of what position you're in logistics. So that's and it's taken me all over the country. I did a team run to the East Coast and out west with a fellow company driver, and I learned a few things there. And from that point, I did that for about 6 weeks, and then I decided I'm just going to go solo. And I have to say, considering the company was so large, coast to coast, a lot of people had said that the men would be very chauvinistic. And it was really interesting. I think it's your attitude towards them, the way you approach the men in a male-dominated world. If you approach them with respect and the genuineness of wanting to learn how to do the job, not I expect you to help me because I'm a feeble female, I think that makes a big difference. I actually only came across one chauvinistic driver that I recall. The rest of them, they helped. Like, I learned so much from these guys, and it was really good. It was quite interesting. So learning experiences, that's what I can say.
You know what, Barb? Something that you just said was alarming to me. You said, quote unquote, it's how you respect them and how they treat and how you treat them. I find that disturbing. I do that. I do say that because how about the men treating the women with respect and, getting to know them in a nice way, and saying, hey, where have you been? All of that, because I'm sure you do the same thing to them. What do you think that problem is where you feel that way or felt that way, I should say?
Well, again, it was back in the 80s, so we weren't as politically correct. I was saying to Ryan before the meeting there that my father's Eastern European. My place was in the kitchen, and the fact that I became a truck driver really annoyed him because in his eyes, I shamed him. So I think a lot of it has to do with the time period.
Mhm.
And everybody feels that back then you had your place. I think one of the things that helped me was because I had worked in the office and I had that summer I'd worked between Barrie and in the Toronto, the biggest office there. And I met all the drivers as a rule. So I had already established a relationship with them. But I don't know. I think it's just the gender differences, and the way that we were brought up in our background. Ryan seems to be quite young, so he was brought up, in a nicer world, so to speak. So I just, whether it's male and female, I think there's just in our world today just a whole lot of lack of respect for each other. It seems to be very much a me society. So there's always going to be conflict because there's lack of respect and kindness out there.
And that's so important that you said that. And the one thing that I related with you a lot, like you said, your background from European, I believe your parents are from Switzerland, coming here. And when you kind of told them that, hey, I want to be a truck driver, it was something that, hey, it was nobody jumped up for joy when you said that. And we kind of faced that. My parents are from the West Indies and we're immigrant families as well. If I was to tell my parents back in the day, like, hey, I'm gonna say screw college, screw university, I want to become a truck driver, they'd look at me like I'm mad, or probably send me to counseling or something like that. But now, and that was what, that was maybe 10, 15 years ago. Have you seen like a change? Like, do you talk to like different other female drivers, seeing the evolution, if there is any, especially in Canada specifically? Because I know we talk a lot about the US, but you and I are both Canadian, so I'd like to kind of learn about your kind of stories of like being on that Ontario side.
I think nowadays, any job is it's okay for any gender to do any job. There doesn't seem to be that set gender. For women drivers, I trained a few up here, and it's really a matter of, again, respecting each other. I know back when I started driving truck, there were very few solo women drivers out. There were a lot of team drivers, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend. And what I found is with the older lady drivers, like the ones that have been doing it for a long time, we are so used to being judged, by society, being in a male-dominated world. What's wrong with you? Like, why couldn't you be a cook or a hairdresser or work in the office? And so I find that the older lady drivers are much more defensive, and they may come off as being hard. And it's not. We're just waiting, for the shoe to drop. Being judged for what we do, and it's. But most of the women that I've come across, again, it's the way you, in my opinion, the way you approach somebody else. It's like when I approach the customs, the booth at the borders, right? If I have fun with the customs officers. When you respect their job, they don't have the best job in the world, right? They're going to meet so many different drivers. Some are nice, some are not so nice. So make them smile, right? And then everything goes a lot nicer. But as soon as you start yelling at them because you've been sitting in custom, like in the lineup for an hour, 2 hours, it's not their fault. Their system broke down or whatever the case scenario. But it's your approaching. So if you approach friendly, then you're gonna, as a rule, get friendly back. So it's, and I find the same with the American drivers, to be honest. Like the women, we just got to get over the fact that we're not competing against each other. We're in this together, and just respect. It's respect, respect, respect. That's a good song too, by the way.
It is. And Barb, when I say this, I mean it. And I can relate to that because the way that we were brought up in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and early 70s, a woman's place was in the home to raise children, to cook, to clean, to do the shopping. And as the evolution of businesses started hiring women, and they started getting to be known in the early 70s, and it started moving in the right direction. The problem is, and you've heard this, if you're not careful, history will repeat itself. And that's what I'm trying to do. And Ryan's on board with this as well, as being the younger generation, to not let this happen, what happened to you and others who are older, who have been in the industry, the younger ones that are getting into the industry, not to have that happen, because that's where the disrespect is. It's great that, women now, a lot of them are the breadwinners, and the men are staying home taking care of the children. That's great. I see no problem with that. The problem is that we're still not leveling up to where we need to be today. Okay, and I haven't said this for a while, but you know about the 1964 Civil Rights Act, Title VII, where women had a lot to do with that in the United States, and that's why we're here today. It's like where have we know where we've been, where we are currently, we know where we need to be, but how the heck are we going to get there? And that's why we have people like yourself on our show to discuss those things, those obstacles, and those barriers that you have to go through in order to level up.
Oh, very true. When I was driving for about a year, and my dad hardly talked to me because, again, all my cousins were guys, and I was not where I was supposed to be. The funny part was my brother got into computer programming, and back then, and it was again back in the late 80s, computer programming, IT departments, they weren't quite out there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was told by a headhunter to go get a job as administrative assistant or secretary back in those days. And he did. He became a secretary for the vice president of the CSAO, which was the Construction Safety Association. So it was ironic that he, as a man, got a job as a secretary in a construction world, right? And here, the sister became a truck driver, in a male-dominated world. So the roles were just really different. And from that point on, my dad, I assumed that he just said, whatever. Obviously, it's not the same here in Canada
Mm-hmm.
as what he grew up with. So then, he tended to be a little more proud of me as a female driver. But the things change. And Ryan and I spoke the other day, you've got to move with change. And if you don't change with the way the world's going, just a quick little link, to electric vehicles, or autonomous trucks. It's not going to happen right soon. There's a lot of bugs to be fixed, but it's better to have an open mind and just say, okay, I don't see it happening in my lifetime to the point that they want to. But on the other hand, life is always evolving, and you just gotta, keep an open mind. But as I usually say, be cautiously optimistic.
I agree.
Completely agree. And with all those things that are doing, I'm going to take a line from you, Barb, when you kind of say that, hey, I want to turn lemons into champagne. And that's something
Yes.
that yeah, that's you
I like
spoke
that.
with me about. Can you talk?
Yeah.
Let's have a little fun. So we talk a little bit of trucking, but that's not all you do. You do a lot of great things. Can you talk to the viewers about what Barbie's musical adventures are? Talk to us a little about bluegrass. Let's put up our feet a little bit and drink a little bit of champagne and talk about some fun stuff in your life.
I learned many years ago, when an opportunity presents itself, jump on it. You don't have to stay in a rut, and sometimes life events will give you the opportunity to get out of the rut. So I've had a lot of lemons thrown at me, and I really got tired of drinking lemonade. So I decided, change your perspective. And so I became a single mom when my son was 5 years old. And that just meant, I was able to afford the basics, food, shelter, but the entertainment world, like entertainment or sports, just wasn't in the budget. So then a friend of mine had started up a music festival, and the sound man and his wife had come, and they said, you're like a core volunteer. Why don't you come and, volunteer at our events? And so that's how it started with it. And it was a bluegrass festival in Northern Ontario, River Valley, just outside of North Bay. And I knew nothing about bluegrass. All I knew, it was Dolly Parton sings bluegrasses, from what I was told. So I ended up, working behind the scenes. I'm a behind the scenes kind of person. I don't like being up on the stage or, in the forefront. So I worked at the gate, dealing with people because I love dealing with people. And I eventually learned more about bluegrass probably about 5 years into my volunteering. And for the record, Jeff, bluegrass is the way I explain it to people is it's all acoustic music,
Yep.
right? It's all stringed instruments. There's no percussions. Very rarely you get amplification, right? And it usually consists of a mandolin, a banjo, a guitar, an upright bass, and sometimes a dobro or resonator, I think is what resonating guitar. Dobro is a brand name apparently. Anyways, you can do a bluegrass show anywhere. You don't need the big stage, and that's why, like at the campsites, like you were mentioning earlier, bluegrass festivals are known for their jamming after the actual show, right? And so I learned a lot about the music. I learned more about festivals, and I started getting involved in other festivals in Ontario. Started volunteering down in the States, and in the meantime, I'm either driving truck. When my son turned 18, he moved out because he could do better than his mom on his own. So I was like, hey, cool. So that again was another opportunity for me. So like, why do I need to stay home? Let me go back doing something. But I had learned through the bluegrass festivals in the States, they have bluegrass cruises down in the Caribbean cruises, like Carnival and Royal Caribbean. And those are private groups. So I was able to go on my first cruise back in, I don't know, 2015, 14, something. No, it would have been 2012, 11. Anyhow, one of the bands that were playing on the cruise was a band from Virginia. Nothing Fancy is their name. An awesome band. They're entertainers, right? And not exactly rednecks, but they're great Virginia people, right? And so what they did, it was a 7-day cruise. They chartered a motor coach to take the band and the band families and the fans. And again, the majority of bluegrassers are seniors. Not exactly sure why, but it is what it is. And so I decided I would hop on their bus down in Virginia and, be a sheep and follow them on how to get on this big cruise ship. And it was going out of Miami that year. So anyways, what great fun to travel with a group of like-minded people. And when Ryan and I talked the other day, music people are generally much happier people and more joyful and excited about life. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So got down to the cruise ship. I knew a few of the other bands that were playing on the cruise as they had come to our Canadian festivals. And it was like, wow, this is like the festival on the water, right? So I was like, oh, I got to bring more people to this, right? Well, don't we learn that the organizers, the promoters of the bluegrass cruise, that was their last year. And I was like, oh, it can't stop. Like, this is great, So a couple from Pennsylvania and we got together afterwards and say, let's do our own cruise. And I'll look after the Canadian side. They'll look after the Americans. So we had a Canadian band, the Spinney Brothers from Nova Scotia. They came on the cruise, and I can't remember all who was on the American side, but the Spinneys, Barbie, had a great following here in Canada, and a great group of two brothers and two or three other guys. Anyways, it was a lot of fun, and I thought, well, then I'll start putting a bus together to go from Ontario down to the cruise, right? Because I already knew as a truck driver the hours of service, right? I knew the timing of everything. So I contacted a motor coach company that had a good reputation, because the motor coach world is very similar to the trucking world. You get your good operators and your not so good operators, equipment wise. And so that's when I was informed that you have to be a licensed travel agent in Ontario to put accommodations and travel together. So I was like, oh, I got to get another license, So So while I was doing the online course, the bus company found out I had my truck license. So why don't you come drive motor coach? You'd be really good at it, right? Well, again, I don't know anything about motor coaches, right? So, but I thought to myself too, what a better way to learn about the industry than from the bottom rung. And so it was, yeah, it was great to learn. I learned a lot by listening, because not all women talk all the time, so I listened. And the seniors will tell you what they don't like, so you kind of read between the lines, don't do this and don't do that. And so then I ended up have received my travel agent license and linked up with a travel agency. And I started putting bus trips together, because a lot of my senior friends from the bluegrass world, where are you going this week, Barbie? Where have you been? We want to hear the stories. And I was like, well, why don't you come travel with me now, right? And we could enjoy life together on the road, right? And so I opened up Barbie's Musical Adventures back in 2014, 2015. And my niche in the market is live music every day, right? And again, you just learn, know who your market is. And in sales, I know that's a huge thing. You got to know who your customers are, what they need from you, and how are you going to make it better for them and make your service valuable. So that goes across any industry. And so what I did, I knew I needed a niche. So the music part was of it. As a bus driver, we actually, in Canada, our hours of service are the same as the truck drivers. I know in the U.S., the motor coach driving hours are different, and it's you really got to understand the differences between the two countries, right? So as a driver up here, it's nothing for you to be awake for 20 hours a day as a motor coach driver. You're expected to sleep when your passengers are in at a show or a ball game or hockey game or whatever. And it was, wow, I'm and that's why I got back out of driving motor coaches, because I was tired of being tired. As much as you're experiencing as a driver, you're not really out there experiencing, you're just trying to make it to the next stop, right? So anyways, when I put my trips together, I was telling Ryan, summer 2019, we did a 14-day trip to East Coast Canada. Down takes 2 hours from Ontario. And you remember, you got seniors on the bus, they don't want to sit for 10, 12 hours on the bus, right? So you want to keep them, entertained and moving. So we would reach out to the hotels and make the contracts. We would, I contracted that we would have our meals at the hotel at the end of the day. So still realizing that the seniors, most of them are diabetics, so you want to keep them eating at regular intervals, right? So we'd get to the hotel at 5, 6 o'clock. And then we do the meal at the hotel so that the driver can have a restful evening and then get ready to go the next morning. And then what I would end up doing, because of my involvement in the music world for so many years, I got to know so many musicians across Canada and US. So it was just a matter of making a few phone calls. You want to come up with an hour, we'll pay you, right? So that's how that part all started. And so my music, my bus trips have live music every day, whether it's a solo guitarist. We went to the Royal International Tattoo in Halifax, which that is a phenomenal thing. And it's not all music. We would go to musical theaters. So like Prince Edward Island has the Anne of Green Gables musical. We did that. We went to some really cool Celtic pubs out in Cape Breton. We just, there's just so much that you can do. Go to the wineries, right? So again, know your customers, put that little twist on it, and they have a lot of fun. And sometimes we have music on the bus, but we find other ways to occupy ourselves on the bus.
There you go.
So it's, yeah.
That's
I know
awesome to
that's
hear.
a long version, right?
No. That's what we want to hear. And that's what we're about here on Sales Chatter. Like I know we're talking empowering women into trucking and all that stuff. And yeah, it's cool to hear that side too. But like I want to get to know people as like I said, our 10-minute conversation was like a 45-minute to an hour call because I
Yeah.
want to get to know you as a person. And that's what we do here. So thank you so much for sharing your story. That is so cool. While you're telling your story about the music, I'm thinking of you as the truck driver. So you're not doing the Barbie's adventures anymore, but you as a truck driver, you're like, I need live music right now. So you probably got somebody in the passenger playing a guitar or something like that with you because you're so used to it. So I want to thank you so much,
Oh,
Barb, for coming out today. It's tons of fun. How can people get a hold of you? I know people definitely, your bubbly personality, the life experiences that you've shared with myself and Jeff, it's just amazing in the audience. How can people get a hold of you?
Oh boy. Well, since COVID, I'm very active in the travel parts. I am on Facebook as Barb Duncan. I do have a LinkedIn account. I'm not on there very often. I quite honestly just haven't had the time. And most of my customers, that's how I reached out for my market with the seniors is Facebook. Yeah, so that. Yeah, I have email as well, so I'm not sure how how you do that over the air.
Yeah, you can promote it on here for people to reach out to you as long as you're comfortable.
Okay, well, my email address, I just use my personal now, is barbieduncan01@gmail.com. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me. I have unusual hours these days, so that's the best way. And then my business name again is Barbie's Musical Adventures. I will be starting up again, setting trips for 2024 next summer. Had to wait until COVID and all the traveling restrictions, and got to see what businesses are still up and running. You don't want to set up a run and then find out when you get there they're not there. So I like a sure thing. So I always make sure that what I say is true and, integrity, right?
And you definitely have that, and that's the one thing that we've thoroughly enjoyed. Like the one thing I know for Jeff as well is that even the stories that you said, like in the musical adventures, or even you as a truck driver, it's so relatable to like
Yeah.
myself in sales. Like finding your customer, finding
Yes.
your niche, and just really dominating that. And that's such an amazing thing to say. So, want to thank you for coming out this
Yeah.
morning. I want to thank our audience. This is an amazing episode, so definitely catch it. If you didn't catch this live, we'll hit the replay back at 2 and 6 p.m. LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you found value in this, which I know you did, share this with a friend, a neighbor, your truck driver, everybody around the world who can get some value, and everybody in the bluegrass music community. Let's get this shared up and get this. Jeff and I'll take my guitar. Jeff will bring his banjo, and we'll start the sales chatters. That'll be our name.
There you
So,
go.
with that being said, thank you
Yeah.
everybody for coming out today. Cowboy, take us home, my man.
Yeah, Barb. Talking about bluegrass, who is your favorite group?
Oh, that's really unfair to ask.
Come on, everybody has one.
I love the band from Virginia, Nothing Fancy. They also host a bluegrass festival in but the third weekend of September down in Buena Vista, Virginia. They are a hoot, very personable people. Lonesome River Band, they're more of I'm going to say more of a professional band. They can be a hoot too. I had put a bluegrass and baseball event together back in 2015 with the Toronto Blue Jays and the New York Yankees. Had American band and the Canadian band. But anyways, it's yeah. A lot of people know like Ricky Skaggs and them. They don't come to the festivals.
Right.
One thing about the bluegrass musicians, they're very down to earth people. And I think that resonates. They're not above us. They just are getting paid to play for us that weekend. But the most of them are really good. There's always up and coming.
Oh yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite instruments, bluegrass, is the washboard. I think it's integral to it. And my favorite bluegrass group, is Allison Cross and Union Station. I love them for sure. Haven't listened to them for a while, but when you said bluegrass, it just kind of resonated with me. I was like, that's a group I would listen to. But listen,
Yeah.
Barb, thank you so much for joining Ryan and I this morning. We appreciate your time. It was very interesting, to find out all of our guests' background and what they're like, their dislike, and what they're up against, especially women in trucking. So again, thank you so much. With that said, Audacious Cowboy is out. We'll see you tomorrow morning on Sales Travel Live at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, a daily podcast. Don't miss it. See ya.
Cool. Thank you.